Yo, what's happening, people? I want to welcome you to Flip the Script podcast show. My name is Sol and I am the host. So, on this show, you'll get the opportunity to listen to some inspiring people talking about real, honest, heartfelt, no holds barred transformation stories. We get to hear from ex-drug users, reformed criminals, all sharing their personal stories and how they manage not only to turn their lives around, but now are helping others to do the same. We also get to hear from courageous men and women sharing their experience of surviving high-level trauma and what they are doing or done to start that much-needed healing process.
At the age of 3 years, I was put out onto the doorstep of a children's home. I was exposed to heightened levels of violence and started to gain the impression that that was the way that life was. The one thing that is of utmost importance to me is my family. It's not negotiable. Made that life-changing decision in 2006. I didn't know how I was going to do it. I didn't know what was going to become of me. I just knew that I'd had enough and I needed something different. Most of all, I didn't want to die.
Welcome to Flip the Script podcast show. My name is Sol. I am the host, and this show is about inviting people on and letting them share their experiences and their transformation journeys. This is real life stuff. This is not made up. This is what people have experienced, and this is where you get to hear how they got through it and what they're doing now. I am honoured and pleasure. I've got my good budget on there, Junior, who's going to come on and share his experience. So Junior, at the moment, from what I see, I know Junior's just recently become a dad. Congratulations to a beautiful princess. I keep on seeing beautiful pictures on social media. Currently engaged to be married, which I'm hoping to attend. Well, no, I am attending next year.
You better.
God willing. Yeah. And also, Junior works in the field of addiction, and Junior's going to explain a little bit what he does and where he's at with that. So yeah, Junior, welcome, man. Thank you for coming along, man. It's really good to see you. As in your words, I appreciate you and I love you. And I know the work that you do supporting other people in their journey. So just tell us a little bit about what you're doing right now, though.
So where I'm at right now is I'm the manager of one of the biggest supported accommodations in the Southwest. I have 7 houses, couple of flats, and basically, 40 clients. We're on the ground constantly. We don't get no time off. I'm also a recovery coach, recovery consultant. I'm a clinical addiction specialist. But in reality, I'm just a man with a passion to help people. What comes from the heart goes to the heart. And that's pretty much where I'm at. Oh yeah, most importantly, I'm a dad. I'm available to be a father, and I do a bloody good job. So yeah, that's
Brilliant. So all of that stuff that you just said is where you are presently, currently. But I know and but you're here for a reason. So tell us a little bit about you growing up and what was it like before, what was it like for you growing up, where you're from and stuff like that.
So I'm from a place in North London called Finsbury Park. Born and grew up there. I was born into a mixed heritage family. My mother was Irish, is Irish, and my father came from a little West Indian island called Montserrat. Neither of them had a good start in life. There were some things and some difficulties that happened in the formative years of their life that left some fundamental scars that, all of us bear. And, they raised 5 children. Initially, when my mother met my father, she had a son, my eldest brother. Then my second oldest brother was born, then my eldest sister, and then my brother Dean, who passed away in 2001 in my arms. And then me, I'm the baby, I'm the youngest in the family. Growing up, there was a lot of internal controversy and strife in my family. We were surrounded by ignorant people who didn't have much tolerance of mixed heritage families, and we experienced a level of abuse and taunting and sometimes spitting, and that included from the police. Through the hardships that my parents experienced, unfortunately, at the age of 3 years, I was put out onto the doorstep of a children's home, and it wasn't a good experience. I was in that children's home, and my personal experience was, I was a follower way before I became a leader. And I used to see the older boys doing things, and what they was basically doing, where they were abusing solvents. And one day I nicked a tin of butane gas off of one of the older boys. I was 6 years of age, and I went into the toilet and I copied what he did, and I experienced that which is called a mind-altering experience, and it detached me from the reality that I was in. At that point, at that age, the reality was, severe abandonment, rejection, and betrayal. A lost child who didn't know what direction he was going in life. He didn't know what tomorrow was holding for him, and I'd imagine very scared. So because of them experiences, that is the core issue that I as a person suffered from: abandonment, rejection, and betrayal. Leading on from that, kind of experience physical abuse in the children's home at the age of 11. And at the age of 13, with no real mentor or anybody that was really that concerned about me, I decamped, as it were. I was out on the streets at an ungodly hour at the age of 13, and that culminated in me being around older people that were intoxicated with mind-altering substances and alcohol. And I was stabbed in my face, broke my jaw in 3 places, knocked out my upper teeth. It kept on. I went to the hospital. They, done what the doctors do. They stitched it all up and that. And then about 2 weeks later, my face swole up, my neck swole up, and ultimately what had happened was a piece of the bottle, about that big, had broke off on my jaw and shot into my neck, and it's sitting there. So they had to go back in and do more surgery. And yeah, so basically people look at me and see a scar and think all manner of things. And the reality was, I was a 13-year-old boy that got assaulted on the streets of London. And that pretty much set up what was about to become with me, because from that day I made a decision that no one would ever harm me again. And it didn't go too well. Most of all, I harmed myself. And just to close off on that, in that experience, I received the blow, and it took me clean off my feet. And clearly I was dazed. I lost an exceeding amount of blood. I needed a blood transfusion when finally we got to the hospital, and a police car pulled up, and there were some police officers in there. And he didn't get out, just from the window, through the window, he said, "Are you all right?" My jaw was broken. I couldn't talk. So I don't know what I said. I don't know what I did. I was just standing there, dazed as a child. And then they asked me my name, and one of them said it for me, and they just drove off. And that there and then cemented my conviction and belief that they weren't my friends, and they didn't care about me. They cared about everybody else, like everybody else seemed to care about everybody else. But it grounded me in the belief no one really cares. And today I live my life by choice, and that choice is to let everybody that I come into contact with know that I care, and that I see them, and that I'm willing to help wherever I can. So
Brilliant.
yeah, that's in a nutshell.
So, I mean, listen, I have heard loads of trauma in it. Going back a little bit, just a little bit, you just said about, being at home, not, I suppose, in some way saying that you didn't feel loved at home, or some form of, you felt like there was a lot going on, and, there was a lot of, you was kind of like left at a children. So tell us a little bit about, describe a little bit how it was for like Junior at that age. I mean, what was it? What was you kind of like? What was a day like for you at that age?
I think that what most people do is they push their trauma into their subconscious. So, if you would have asked me that question 10 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to answer it. I would have just brushed it off. It is what it is. What it isn't is what it is. Trauma is real and it affects us even if we don't know it. So as a child, that, you know, I felt unwanted. I felt unloved. I felt like I didn't matter. I felt like no one cared. I craved my parents' attention. You know, none of that was available. So in short, what I experienced was those that should have been available to me weren't, or and couldn't be, you know, for their reasons they couldn't be available to me. And what that did was it impacted me mentally and spiritually, where I myself then became unavailable. And for well into my 38th year, I remained unavailable to, and I sought out relationships with people that were unavailable. You know, big damage, said simply. Unavailability is not, it's not a joke.
No, and I kind of understand when I like, and I like what you said about, you know, sometimes our parents couldn't give what they didn't have. Do you know what I'm saying? And that's what you kind of said it,
Absolutely.
because we can sit here and we can blame. Because I used to do a lot of that with my parents, same sort of thing. You know, you know, not present, 4 or 5 jobs a day. You know, not at home, not, you know, the nurturing that we probably wanted, the craving that we, you know, what you talked about. You know what I mean? Not getting it, but getting in
Mm,
other areas maybe. Do you know what I mean?
mm,
But
mm.
yeah, and I was blamed. You know, the first thing I said was, you know, I wasn't loved, I wasn't this, you know, and like you said, you know, sometimes they can't give you what you didn't have, so we go
Absolutely.
out and we go and seek it, you know,
Mm, mm.
and that's exactly what this young, you know, you as a young person, you said that you did. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I think that, you know, blame can only last for as long as you don't have the other side of the story. There's my story, there's their story, and then there's the truth. And in truth, in essence, what I've done is you know, I've made action towards sitting down and listening to their experiences as children and growing up. You know, I resented them, I disliked them, I didn't respect them. I sat down with them, I heard their story, and I came away from the decision. And the decision was this: my father was always a hard-working man, and he provided for his family. My mother was a survivor of my trauma. Sounds bad. When I listened to my mother's trauma, it was much worse. So, in essence, now I consider her to be a formidable woman who's overcome, stands her ground. She's 81 years of age now. My father's dead. Listen, I've got nothing but forgiveness for my mother. If I can't forgive her, why should I be forgiven? But more importantly, you know, she's an 81-year-old woman. It's not about what she did. I can't use that to justify the unacceptable in myself. Ultimately, it's not about what she did, it's about what I'm doing. I can't live my life based in that resentment. We know having a resentment is like drinking poison, expecting someone else to die, when in turn, all you actually really do is harm yourself. You know, so I had to let go of that gear with forgiveness. I just love on my mum now. And, you know, ultimately, I was taught some valuable lessons, what not to do with your children. You know, and my children are quite impressive, you know,
Brilliant.
and I'm a 53-year-old man. I've got a 35-year-old son, highly successful. Let's not get into it because, you know, I want to protect his anonymity. Boy, I could not be more impressed. He's impressed me enough for the rest of my life, but yet he still keeps growing. I have a beautiful 29-year-old daughter, extremely proud of her success. You know, I have a 7-year-old stepson, amazing little boy, and I have a 12-week-old daughter. So, you know, they're pretty spread out.
Yeah,
Pretty spread out. I'm blessed.
really,
Some people say, well, you know, you should be having grandkids. Listen, you do you, I'll do me. When I see
exactly.
my daughter, she refreshes me. You know, you get up in the morning, you drink a glass
Yeah.
of water, and you feel refreshed. Every time I lay eyes on this little girl, I'm refreshed. You know, she's,
Junior,
yeah,
I
she's
feel refreshed when I lay eyes on her and I see a picture of her and I think, wow, look how beautiful this young. You know what I mean? I know, man. She's a beauty, and as a father as well, I
yeah.
get it, man.
So
Seriously.
what I'm saying is that, you know, through not having a family or the availability of a family in my formative years, the one thing that is of utmost importance to me is my family. It's not negotiable. It's not negotiable. My children will be raised in a way that I wasn't, and they will be taught in a way that I wasn't. And ultimately, for that, this is the thing. Cycles need to be broken. You don't just hand it on and hand it on and hand it on and take no responsibility. I'm not responsible for what people taught me, but I am responsible for what I'm teaching other people, especially if they're other people's children, because these children are lost out here enough. So actually, we'll get to it, but I have a purpose. And that purpose is to treat people how I expect to be treated, which in essence is why we called our daughter Justice, because that's what it means. Treat people how you want to be treated, man. And especially if they're other people's children. Speak love into them, encourage them, show and signify that there's a good side to them, even if they are lost in the haze that I came from. We can still reach them. What comes from the heart goes to the heart.
Exactly.
So yeah,
100%. 100%. I work with young people. I work with the lost, so I kind of know. You know what I'm saying?
absolutely.
Totally get it. So going back a little bit. So you're a 13-year-old now. You've kind of tried your hand in a few solvents and some minor altering substances. So what happened there? What was the journey?
Well, I think that what happened was ultimately through that impact of the way that the police treated me at the scene, and the being introduced to mind altering substances, it clearly grew from that solvent abuse, and it got harder and harder and harder. My life, I looked up to the wrong people. I associated and hung about where those people would be, front lines and shebeens, and I was in shebeens from the age of 13. I was standing in, basements where loud music was being played, and no child should be exposed to. But I was there and I witnessed it. I was exposed to heightened levels of violence, and started to gain the impression that that was the way that life was. Prostitution and all this other kind of low energy type experience that impacted me as a child, that which I stand against now and which I help other people overcome. So as that 13-year-old boy, the only word that I could ever really express for that child would be lost, lost. And no one was looking for him. Nobody was looking for him. So yeah.
Cool. So the progression started. So you've had all these experiences. You've kind of been around people you shouldn't been around. You've seen violence. You've seen drugs, prostitution, all that stuff. So how long was that? Did that continue? Did you know? How did it? How long did it continue?
Okay, so clearly in my formative years, I use this because it is the issue. Um, I had an immense sense of being abandoned and rejected and betrayed. Um, Ultimately, what happened was that soaked into my heart and my spirit and my mentality. And ultimately, what happened was I became my biggest abandoner, betrayer, and it after the age of 18, all responsibility fell on me. But as a person, I was full of excuses and justifications and rationalizations and blame. I carried an immense feeling of guilt and shame. And it was easier for me to blame other people for my downfalls and my shortcomings. In other words, the things that I was doing wrong. Well, if you'd been through what I'd been through, you'd be just like me. And ultimately, that's just a weak excuse. However, respectfully, when that started to happen to me at the age of 18, no one was coming to talk any love to me. No one was interested in anything other than encouraging me towards becoming what could have been expressed as a monster. I wasn't a monster. I wasn't angry. I wasn't violent. I was scared. That's my truth. Some of the most dangerous people I know run on fear.
Yeah,
So yeah,
definitely.
yeah.
Just as something I want to kind of say. So, would you say the way you spoke about, justification, blame, and all that stuff. Was that
Mm.
not, do you think, a bit of a survival technique that you picked up because the trauma that you've experienced previously and the life that you was living and the life that you was in was so traumatic for such a young person that
Mm.
the way to deal with it was the only way was to like not take no responsibility, because you're obviously at that time you couldn't, you didn't have it in, you didn't have the tools, you didn't know how to deal with it, so you went to blame, justification, and that was your surviving, that was your way of dealing with what was going on.
Absolutely. Listen, we have a denial system for a reason. Without a denial system, I believe that with the stresses of this life that we live, this world that we live in, every single one of us would have broke down a long time ago and be in a corner in a straitjacket dribbling. There has to be, it's biologically necessary for us to have a denial system. I also had a heightened level of delusion, and because of that, ultimately, I had to be able to blame other people because I already felt an immense feeling of low self-worth, low self-esteem, and low self-respect. In essence, I felt self-loathing. I didn't like myself. If at that point I would have had to take the blame from other people and put it upon myself, that would have been an overbearing that this young mind wouldn't have probably been able to handle. And ultimately, I wouldn't be the man I am today. I'll probably be a man like many of our spiritual brothers and sisters existing within mental health institutions. Trauma is a really serious thing. And
Mm,
luckily for my denial system, and luckily for them years where I was caught up in the misunderstanding and the desensitization that it was okay to blame. I blamed because absolutely it was the way that I needed to survive. But eventually, the way that I was surviving turned my life into nothing other than a very low level
mm.
experience of anything that wasn't life, really. So, yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of, because I really kind of relate to what you're saying. What you said. There's I've got a saying that I kind of say, and some people find it controversial, which is fine, but my opinion is sometimes the blaming and the mind altering substance saved me. It very
Yeah.
much saved me. It saved
Yeah.
me. It saved me from what you said, mental health institute. It saved me from self harm, suicidal, all of that stuff. It took me away for just enough time, you know, um, to I suppose have some form of ease in myself. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So, look, in essence, mind altering substances are something that I used to bury my
Mm,
feelings and emotions. Okay. What I couldn't cope with was the overwhelming sense of not being loved or wanted,
mm,
feelings that I couldn't cope with. I tried to push it down. However, mind altering substances shut it down.
mm,
And when I discovered that, what happened for me was I got a new sense of confidence because I was no longer lingering in the residual effects of self-loathing. They shut it down. It gave
mm,
me an essence of freedom, but it also gave me a false confidence. And with my misunderstood and misdirected approach to life, it was going to lead to catastrophe any
mm,
way you see it. And ultimately, that's what most people don't understand. Listen, if you have a change of value, if you have a change of opinion or approach to life, you come away from a really destructive life pattern and you try to learn something that's more positive and more wholesome. When you stop that behavior and when you stop using them substances, ultimately the first thing that comes back are feelings and emotions. In my experience, they're the things we have the most of and know the least about. And many of my feelings and emotions were extremely uncomfortable when I realized how much trauma I'd really experienced and why I had decided to actually go down the dark road of mind altering substances. I started to develop a compassion for myself rather than self loathing, low
mm,
self worth, low self esteem, low self respect. What I started to develop was a deep understanding of why it was the way that it had been and therefore what needed to change so that I could become the man that I was always meant to be. Listen, at the age of 38, I still stuck in regression, spiritually, mentally, and emotionally. I was a 15-year-old, as a 38-year-old man, a child in a
100.
body of a man. Mm.
Exactly. And I'm totally same, man. 37.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Emotionally unstable, some would call it. You know what I'm saying? But you know, all it was just not
Emotionally,
meant to
yeah,
manage his feelings, man. Being a teen,
mm,
being a kid.
yeah,
So okay, so all of this is going on. Um, Obviously, you're still kind of, you know, using minority substances, and the progression's happening. So tell me a little bit about the catastrophes you spoke about. You know, it led you to catastrophes and stuff like
yeah.
that.
So, you know, I lost the concept of fear of others. I didn't like you before I even met you. If you was walking down the street, you were a threat to me, and I lived a very isolated life. But I had a team of people that thought and felt exactly the same way. You know, we're gang affiliated. You know, and
Definitely.
it wasn't good. A lot of people got hurt. You know, hurt people hurt people. I was hurting, so I wanted to project and simulate that back upon the world that I felt was, you know, the enemy. You know, for a long time as a child, I didn't want to be here, and I acted accordingly. I put my life on the line many times. I put myself in situations that I should not have survived. Lots of my friends didn't, including my brother, and they're still dying in that environment. You know, I believe that within myself, I was emotionally, spiritually, and mentally cut off from having any real understanding or capacity to evaluate what life could really be. You know, I wouldn't admire a butterfly.
Mm.
I didn't watch birds fly. My eyes were always on the ground, and if I looked up, it was trouble. You
Yeah.
know, and I say that with regret and
Yeah.
sadness. Yeah,
Yeah. I kind of listen. I was just, you know, it's like being on red alert constantly. My
constantly.
nervous system was on red alert constantly. There wasn't a time for me to feel at ease at all, you know, and that's what you're talking about. Constantly, it's like, you know, like soldiers when they go out and they go to war, you know, they are on high alert constant. They've been trained to be on high alert. And that's exactly what happened with me and you. I think, you know, growing up, we was on high alert constantly due to our experiences, due to how we felt. I know how I felt. Do you know what I mean? I was in fear, constant fear that someone's going to want to attack me or take my stuff or do something to me. So I had to be on high alert constantly. And like you said, I found a
Absolutely.
lot of people that were on high alert with me. And they were my
Mm.
people. They were my, you know, like you said, the gang affiliation. You know, we are on road now. That's it. You know, and
Mm.
like you said,
Sadly.
we're really sad because we was hurt. Like you said, we're hurt people. We're
Mm.
like a wounded dog walking around
Mm.
with this
Mm.
wound that no one can't really, you know what I mean, see or we don't know how to heal, or you know, yeah, really
Mm.
sad, man.
You know, so listen, as a society, we are responsible for the way that we impact on the children. Okay. Now, as a child growing up, having the experiences that I had with the police, having the experiences I had with racism, which is widely unspoken about, but painfully true in our society. With all that information, I grew up as a child thinking, well, this is stacked against me.
Mm,
Everything's stacked against me. So whatever I do, I'm just going to come out like a tenacious animal and take what is being refused to me. I used to go around my friend's house and, you know, see them experiencing hardly any hardship, you know. And I don't want to say it was because of the color of their skin, but now I will say it, you know, because the color of their skin was different than ours. Oh, you're not really black, are you? Listen, there's an old law from slavery, and it was one drop of black blood, and you were considered to be that. You know, and as wrong as that may be, I'm not attempting to use it as a justification. It's just the reality of society's demands of us. And growing up as a boy, that impacted me in a massive way. And I chose to take a direction where it was definitely the wrong direction. I was definitely running on the wrong energy. However, it's all I had. And no one weren't reaching out to us as children, caring about us. Listen, when I was growing up, at first there were places where you could go. There were, adventure parks, and there were youth centres. Where they gone? But they died out in our era.
Yeah.
We got to a certain age and they just disappeared. They stopped being funded. They stopped being encouraged. And ultimately, this is one of the reasons why, for want of a better way to put it, as a society, our children are becoming so lawless and dangerous. And in essence, so, them experiences for me and them experiences that I work with other people with, we are PTSD survivors, post-traumatic
100%.
stress,
100%.
yeah.
100%. 100%. Yeah. 100%. And I'm really, so this is young Junior. He's going through life. He's got this big wound on him that he's carrying around. He's trying his hardest to try and fit in where he needs to fit in, or not even want to fit in, or pushing everybody away, but just trying to do life. Tell me a little bit more about, what was it like? I mean, because you said you're a father too, you've got two older children as well. What was
Yeah.
it?
So, my background kind of grew into being quite lawless. I have a criminal past, clearly, from abandonment on the doorsteps of a children's home to an institution of a children's home, and then my first experience of being incarcerated was at the age of 14, and then I culminated over 17 years behind the door in some of the worst dispersals in this country. More fear, more fear, more hungry animals around me, and me there acting like a hungry animal. And in amongst all that chaos and carnage, to my shame, something that I've put right now, but to my shame, two children were born to me, the two oldest children that I mentioned earlier. And because of my life choice, because eventually it did become a choice, because of my life choice, in essence, they experienced the same abandonment, rejection, and betrayal that I so often moaned and whinged about. And I didn't initially, in that instant, break the cycle. I think the only good thing that could be said about it was that I was removed from their care, and therefore I had no influence over them. Hence the reason why I believe my mentality would not have been healthy as a parent. God works in mysterious ways. I wish that it had been different. However, having been removed in that way, they favorably grew into a young man and a young woman. And but nonetheless, that doesn't absolve me. It doesn't absolve me of what my actions brought about. Abandonment, rejection, and betrayal is real. I've had to offer my son support, and he's had to go and get it. And still, nonetheless, he's a lawful, upstanding, highly favoured, meaningful member of society, and so is my daughter. And I'm just glad that they managed to break the cycle without me. And now that cycle's been broken in them and in myself. I now have the ability to be the man and to be the father that I should have always been. And I'll do so till my dying days. I don't make excuses anymore. I don't justify the unjustifiable. I don't accept the unacceptable from myself or anybody else. I don't seek unavailable people because I'm available. I don't accept second best. I seek quality. If it's not quality, if you're not coming with a healthy investment, keep it. I don't want it. All right. If you're talking nonsense to me, or you're changing the vibration of my energy and making me think that I can regress back into that old guy, then I'll remove myself very quickly. I don't care how bad you think you are. I want to know how much love you've got. And if it's not loving, I'm going to love on you. And that's just how it is. But not everybody's ready for that. Not everybody's ready for that. We have to gauge people.
there's lots of, you know, I'm a very person, I'm one of them people that loves old sayings and things like that that really resonate to me. You know, they say that thing, you know, show me who your friends are and I'll show you who you are. You know, like you,
Absolutely.
I like to be around people that are much more in a different energy than the energy that I was I say so much entwined in when I was in my younger days. I start you, Junior. You know, you talked about, you know, the whole incarceration. I know you from years. Yeah, we stepped on the same sort of, yeah, same way.
Mm,
Yeah. Um,
yeah.
how did it? What I was going to ask you, in between all of this going on, was there ever a point in you within yourself, Drew, that you thought, you know, there's something different. I'm better than this. This is not supposed. This is not me. This is. Was there ever a point in that time? Was there a window of, you know, like a little? Sometimes we have that little window, don't we? Did you ever, did you ever have that in?
Yeah, I think there was always evidence. Like I said, I'd go around to other people's homes with friends, and I'd see a mother and a father, and I knew that things could be different. Things weren't only the way that they were for me. I knew that there was better things to be had out there. Um, I just didn't get enough of it. I am what I become exposed to. You know,
Mm,
what you watch, what you read, what you eat is who you are in essence. And you know, because I knew that there was other people that are having better experiences than me, ultimately what that did, it didn't do me any favors. It made me feel worse. You know, However, there were plenty of people that crossed my path, many, many, many soulmates, not of the
mm,
sexual variety, people that crossed my path, that tried to speak love into me, but they were never there for long enough and hard enough. The most consistent thing in my life was dysfunction, and everybody was about it, and they all minimized and desensitized and normalized the most outrageous nonsense. And I believed it, you know. So the window of opportunity for me, it came in many forms. I just didn't jump through it. The real breaking point for me was in 2001, where you know I first it was fun, then it was fun with problems, and then it was just problems. And ultimately, what happened was, I could make money, um, but what I couldn't do was on the 14th of August 2001, from the lifestyle choice that me and my older brother had made. His name was Dean. Our behaviour ended with him dying in my arms, um, experiencing a massive cardiovascular collapse. His heart and lungs popped. Um, One of the biggest losses I ever took. My big brother. We were always together. We marched. We were a team. We kind of, in a very destructive way, we were a formidable unit. You know, and when he died in my arms again, that was something that I had to take. I didn't. I took responsibility more so than I should have. My big brother died from drug addiction. Drugs killed him. But on the day that he died again, I'm 38 years of age. No, sorry, in my 30s, early 30s, and 20 years ago. So yeah, roughly about 36. And initially, when I got to him, he was in a really bad condition. And there was loads of people standing around. He was in the middle of the road. There was an off-duty policeman. This man's having a psychotic episode. There's an off-duty policeman, got him in an arm lock. His pockets had been gone through, and certain things were missing. Um, and I responded aggressively to this off-duty policeman. He weren't holding his arm any longer. Put it that way. I picked my brother up. I got him out of the middle of the road onto the pavement, and he was experiencing a psychosis, and he was expressing that psychosis. And there were little green men. It weren't pretty. It was really quite soul destroying. And he was there for 45 minutes, in and out of reality, in and out of consciousness. and I was trying to keep him awake. And then more police officers turned up. And again, they tried to jump on him and restrain him. And I had to fight them off as well. And because of the way that I was being so defensive, because it was clear to me, I'm sorry, but guys, if you've never experienced what it's like to be black in the UK, then I'm telling you what it's like. And you can look at me and see that I'm not even that dark a shade. My brother was exactly the same complexion as me. But when the police turned up, they just wanted to jump on him and be aggressive with him. And I wouldn't allow that. You know, eventually an ambulance turned up 45 minutes later. I picked him up. I put him on the stretcher. He turned over onto his belly. We turned him back over and he turned blue and died. You know, and that was it. In that moment, everything that I was in delusion and denial about with regards to where my life was broke. I was like, can't do this. However, it continued for another 5 years. You know, I was still so I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. But at 38 years of age, that's when I really kind of gained the ability to bring about change. So at that point, when he died, shortly after, I was incarcerated. And, you know, the behavior and the mind-altering substance used continuously throughout that time being behind the door. And I got to the end of this sentence and I was sitting in a cell with another individual. And I experienced something because I knew that in like 2 weeks' time, I'm going to be released. And this devastating, never-ending cycle of destruction was going to continue. And something snapped inside me. And what snapped was my denial, my delusion, my self-defeating attitude and belief system broke and fell away. And I was like, I'm not doing this no more. You know, and I was released. And I moved out of London and I came to where I am now. And that was 15 years ago on the 16th of this month. And I've never looked back, never looked back, you know.
Well done.
Yeah. And that's, you know, leading on, you know, there's some questions that, you know, what's my motive? I don't want to see anybody else's children die if I can help it. Nonetheless, in my profession, you know, people have died, you know, for whatever reason, they were no longer compatible with some of the properties and I'd have to lovingly remove them to keep the rest of the clients safe. And people have died and I've had to phone their mothers and their fathers and say, your child's dead. And the wails and the screams, they make the hairs in the back of my arm stand up. And I've experienced that so many times. I have a saying, if you hear it, it's mine. What's it like to meet yourself? Because every time I speak to the mother and the father who have run out of options with their children before they get to us, and nonetheless, what we've experienced as children and what the path that we've chose to inoculate and or suppress the feelings and emotions, when they come back up, a lot of people can't cope. So they return to their mind-altering substances. And the thing about mind-altering substances is they kill people. They kill people at the worst. They cause people to become incarcerated. And, you know, a lot of people lose their mental capacity and go insane.
They take out whole families, don't they, Junior? That's the
Absolutely.
thing. Take
Absolutely.
out whole families.
You know, unfortunately, for a society that has the ability to look down on those of people that are affected in the most detrimental ways by something that is freely sold in vast amounts in the aisles of Tesco's and Asda. You know, alcohol is the worst substance. However, you know, drugs are drugs, alcohol is a drug, drugs are drugs, mind-altering substances are mind-altering substances. And it kind of, the reason why this thing is so disproved of is because society has been desensitized into the belief that it's okay to nullify and numb ourselves with alcohol or what other thing. If you desensitize people, children growing up in houses where parents are drinking and it looks sociable, oh, I want to do that when I grow up, and then that child grows up just to discover that one is too many and the thousand's never enough. But yet it's freely sold. I think as a society, we've got a lot to answer for. And I think that,
Definitely.
greed and monetary gain is no longer a sustainable excuse. Same as killing all the fish and same as, we poison the world. I do it. I go outside and I turn the key in the car and start on my SUV and, I'm polluting the world. I'm as guilty as anybody else. However, there are a lot of things about me and you that have come to change. And therefore, what we do is we encourage other people in the same way. I don't wake up in the morning, I don't hurt people anymore. And most of all, because of that, I don't hurt myself. If I'm not hurting myself, I won't hurt you. So that's where I needed to take responsibility. Doesn't matter what happened to me. What matters is what I'm doing for myself today. Yeah.
And having said that, Junior, just you. So now you've stopped using the minority substances. You've got into a form of recovery. How do you manage the whole thing that you talked about, your feelings and emotions when they come back? Because they've all come back now.
Absolutely.
What do you do to nurture yourself and heal and I suppose self-soothe in a, I suppose, in a healthy way?
Okay.
What do you do, Junior?
Part and parcel of also, when I was kind of, made that life-changing decision in 2006, I didn't know how I was going to do it. I didn't know what was going to become of me. I just knew that I'd had enough and I needed something different. Most of all, I didn't want to die. A lot of my friends had died. I also, because of the way that I lived and the way that I treated myself, I had done a hell of a lot of physical damage to my body. When I came out of the madness, so to speak, I had shattered my left leg. I had severe impact injuries to my pelvis. I broke my back. So in essence, when I got here, I've currently got had my left ankle replaced. So I've got a total ankle replacement. I need a double hip replacement, T4, T5 wedge fracture, double 12% curvature of the spine, and a rotary cuff impingement in my left shoulder. In reality, I should be in a wheelchair, but through sheer determination, I refuse to do that. I look after myself by what I eat. Lockdown didn't help. Now I'm back onto my intermittent fasting. I only eat between the hours of 12 p.m. and 8 p.m. And then I have a 16-hour clear out period where, my body has a chance to fire up its ketones, and we are what we eat, right? And we also are the way that we eat. I don't watch horror films. I'm very sensitive. I try not to watch anything that's not nurturing and healthy. I do like a box set. I can't resist the Gangs of London, because I just have a calling of solidarity, so to speak. I couldn't read until I was 15. I'm self-taught. I won't turn the camera on, but my library is extensive. I read a hell of a lot on, ranging from psychological, neuralistic programming, neurological programming, counseling, psychotherapy, many, many different other books about how we as individuals can help other people overcome the traumas that we identify with. TA, there's so many books up there, man. Sitting here trying to remember the titles.
Transactional analysis.
Yeah. I'll tell you one of my favorite ones. Emotional intelligence.
Yeah, great.
If I'm flying out of my car because someone's cut me up, acting like a lunatic, something's wrong.
Mm.
Something's wrong with me. There's not something wrong with the world. There's something wrong with me. I have no business overreacting to situations anymore. I need to stop reacting and learn how to be responsible and responsive. Now, that's a big statement coming from where I come from.
Mm.
However, like anything in our life, the more you practice it, the better you'll get at
It
it. If
gets.
all you're ever practicing is dysfunctional chaos, then you'll be very good at being manipulative, dysfunctional, and chaotic. However, if you change that and you start to nurture yourself with new ideals and new values, how to be loving, how to be caring, how to be emotionally available and intelligent, how to be who you was always meant to be. If you nurture that, you will become that. Simple neuro-linguistic programming. Our neuroreceptors and our neural pathways are dictated to by our actions. I understand that we have 50,000 thoughts a day. When I first got here in 2006, then at least 30,000 of them thoughts were dysfunction. Now, and that left 20,000 thoughts that didn't really get a look in, that were probably more healthy.
Mm.
I needed to tip the scale. So now I'd say that, might sound a bit cocky, but I'd say that at least 40,000 thoughts that I have a day are based within positivity. 99.9% of my life is based in how I can help the next person. If you're constantly thinking about helping people, who do you think you're going to help the most? Yourself. Now,
Being of service.
absolutely, we live in service for others.
Mm.
That doesn't mean that my life's a good life. Trust me, I'm blessed. For where I come from to where I am, on paper, that shouldn't be the case. However, I believe, and I strongly believe, that in the right hands, being spoken with the right love, anybody, don't give up on people. Listen, don't shoot the wounded. If you can't help someone, get out of the way. Don't make it more difficult for them. Because in life, your opinion's not needed. And, ironically, I'm not seeking anybody's approval. But more importantly, your approval's not needed. I don't care what anybody else thinks of me anymore. Because what I learned to do was observe the main person in my life that I needed, who had a front row in my life. I cared so much about what other people thought of me that I fell into the not so loving arms of the demands of society and this social science that we experience. The one person that I really need to be aware of watching me is me. And for a long time in my life, I'd look in mirrors and all that would be staring back at me was a blank gaze. I couldn't even look at myself sometimes. Today, I can look myself in the mirror. I am absolutely, unreservedly content with who I am. I make no excuses for what I've done, but I make every exception of what I've become. And if I can't say that for myself and I need other people to say it to me so that I can believe it, then I don't have any self-belief, I don't have any confidence, and I don't have any self-worth. I am who I say I am. If you want to take that and remember something of my past, that's up to you. But you're talking about a different man. That's not who I am today. And that's the interesting thing. You meet someone of old and you say, oh, do you know blah blah? Yeah, I've known him for years. I'll tell you some things about that guy. You ain't seen them for 20 years, but they can tell you some things about someone. No, you can't. Unless you're in someone's life, you don't know enough about them to talk. So, for me, it's important that, I put that out there, that people can change. If I can do it, anybody can. It just depends who's speaking to them. Depends who's loving on them. It depends what kind of messages they're receiving. If all we're doing is compounding their negative self-belief, then we're not helping. However, if we speak life and love and energy into them, and we point out the highlights of, the qualities that we can see in them, and
Affirming them.
absolutely, and
Absolutely.
the skills, the negative things that they're doing, how they can be mutated into transferable skills. Listen, I know some guys out there that are about it. If they turn their life around, there'd be some formidable businessmen.
Yeah.
You know, transferable skills is really important. You know, and
Definitely.
so in essence, what I'm saying is it's not important what other people think of us. What's important is what we think of
We
ourselves.
think of ourselves. Brilliant. So, gonna kind of round it off in a minute.
Mm.
If you could say something to the young junior, I know you speak to a lot of young juniors at the moment or juniors that are in the place, whatever age. What could you say to them?
I'd say that, you know, life is a series of choices. And although in my past I may have made some bad choices, a choice is just a thought. You know, when I make a choice, I think it before I act upon it. If we change our thoughts, then we can change our actions. Just because you used to act in a certain way doesn't mean that that's the way you need to act today. If you wake up today and you're unhappy with your life, do something to change it. You know, be kind to yourself, be loving to yourself, have some respect for yourself. Don't follow everybody else that is about that path and that life, because that isn't a life. My experience is when I made that discovery, I have experienced life-changing circumstances, you know, and I've gone from being desperate and hopeless to breathing hope into other people and having blessings upon blessings and a life beyond my wildest dreams. I never thought that this would happen to me, you know. So, you know, that's it. Really, your thoughts are just a thought. You know, your choices are your actions, and if you change the way you're thinking and you change the way you're acting and you stop making excuses just because everybody else is doing it, doesn't mean that you should. You know, all of this must be followed with positive action. It's all about being positive in your own life and not following other people's misguided, desensitized, lack of moral compass. Yeah, that's quite a long message.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
Change.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Junior, I just want to say thank you so much, man. You always blow hope into my heart, man, and I hope you've done that to the listeners today and the viewers. I'm sure you have, man. People are listening
God
here
willing.
right now.
God willing. Yeah. You know,
I will hope to see you soon.
Yes.
On the 17th of July, hopefully.
Yes.
And you've got a birthday coming up. Is that right? Is that your clean time, your recovery?
Clean time. So on the 16th of June, when I was released from Her Majesty's pleasure, and that was the day that I was released from prison. That was the day that I stopped using any form of mind-altering substance, including alcohol. That was the day that I experienced the rebirth, and that day is 15 years this coming Wednesday.
Wow, well done.
The 16th of June. Thank you, sir.
Absolutely inspirational. Thank you, Junior, and I will see you soon, man. Nothing but love.
But I love you. Keep inspiring. Keep doing what you're doing. We need you, you know, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity, all right?
Nothing but love. Yo, what's happening, people? I want to welcome you to Flip the Script podcast show. My name is Sol and I am the host. So, on this show, you'll get the opportunity to listen to some inspiring people talking about real, honest, heartfelt, no holds barred transformation stories. We get to hear from ex-drug users, reformed criminals, all sharing their personal stories and how they manage not only to turn their lives around, but now are helping others to do the same. We also get to hear from courageous men and women sharing their experience of surviving high-level trauma and what they are doing or done to start that much-needed healing process. They say that life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forward. On this show, we get to understand what that actually means. Everyone's got a story, but not everyone gets to share theirs. So remember, hit the subscribe button, press like, so we can continue to spread the message that change is possible even in the darkest of places.